this movie is a very, very safe movie. It doesn't really do anything interesting. It's more just like a very extremely safe story that's based on these warrior women in the kingdom of Dahomey. And while that premise is interesting to explore these women and explore the how they are, and before we talk about the controversy about this movie, I just want to talk about just the storytelling and some of like the directing and the writing in it. And I just want to say like the characters, they're all right. You know, they have characters. They explain a little bit about their past in like 2 seconds. And Viola Davis's character is the most interesting person here. She has a great performance. Everyone in this movie pretty much does what they're meant to do. There's nothing that stands out about anything in this movie. Even like the cinematography is pretty bland. There really isn't anything that's grabbing me about this movie, and especially with like the whole idea of like the truth, I guess, around the movie. Like bottom line is just this movie is just not very interesting. It's not very there's nothing standing out about this movie that's catching my attention, making me go like, "Wow!" Like the story itself is pretty generic. It's just like, it's pretty much like Mulan, except set in Africa. Then Viola Davis's character is there, and she's doing interesting stuff. Like there's all these little like world building elements that makes the story more interesting, and you stay attached to it. And but even like those elements weren't out there enough to like really grip you and invest you in the story. It was about an hour into the movie and there still really wasn't anything that was attaching me until something that we learn about Viola Davis's character. And that's when the story actually finally picks up and you're like, okay, now at least we're going somewhere now. But like pretty much just like a generic movie where like this girl's just learning to train to be a woman warrior and it's like, okay, that's cool, I guess. And it's just like it sounds so I sound like such a like terrible person right now, but like realistically, like this is a totally fine movie. Anybody who watches this will probably have a good time, and will probably enjoy the story, and probably will enjoy the characters, and will probably like the ending. But just for me personally, it just wasn't. It was just too generic for me to get anything from it. There wasn't like a major theme. They tried to dive into like leadership and I guess responsibility and you know being a woman, and especially with like all the reviews and critics raving about it, it's like totally not warranted. This movie is pretty much the definition of overrated. Oh gosh, I'm being crazy controversial, but like literally, like actually, I mean, like legit. There's, I mean, there's like a What I liked was so. Let's just address the controversy about the idea that these women were actually this kingdom was basically like responsible for like trading like a third of all slaves during the Atlantic slave trade, which is like a pretty big deal. And these women were actually more terrifying and more vicious than they are portrayed in the movie. That's just interesting because it's like in real life, these women are actually really, really bad. And like these people are kind of really bad. But then you think about like, well, in a way that they were forced to kind of do it because then they would themselves could become slaves if they don't themselves trade their own people or people that they find. So it's just like a very complicated web, but it just the movie doesn't really want to dive into any of those truths. They touch the topic of slavery and they touch it about like, yo, we should stop, you know, selling slaves. And then the king's like, yeah, but it's not very profitable. I like selling slaves because it makes me money. And it just to me, for a movie like this set in this time with this like subject matter, it just seems necessary to dive more into that. That's the kind of movie I would like to see. I would like to see more of like an historical drama based around the whole slave trade and like the immorality around it and kind of like the hard decisions they had to do and make in order to actually participate in the slave trade. And it was just like that would be more of an interesting story to me instead of just like a war movie where like some people get captured and then they have to save them. And like there's like a 1v1 thing in there and Viola Davis's character has a story and it's just like it's not the movie I really wanted to see or really honestly cared about. Because when the movie started and they brought up the subject matter and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I want to see where this goes. And then it doesn't go in the direction that it goes or that I wanted it to. And I was just like, okay, this is kind of, very interesting. I totally forgot to mention that there's literally also a whole romantic subplot that was so forced into this movie and just does not work at all. And every time the dude in that relationship is on screen, it just does not work for me. And it was pretty bad. Yeah, it wasn't good. But that's just my personal thing. That's just what I got from it. I just felt like I didn't get anything. I didn't get what I wanted, and I also didn't enjoy what we got as much. It was entertaining for the most part, but it's like a movie like this shouldn't be like an entertaining war action fun movie, and that's kind of what the movie sets out to be. And so I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. This is a weird movie, but like once again, not bad at all. It's just very bland and generic for my taste. Once again, I'm not racist. Or am I misogynist? Because I'll just say this: like I like the characters and I like the performances and I like the setting. I just wish we could go more into that world than what we got for my personal taste. And some people may say that, oh, you already got a lot, but I'm like, I didn't get a lot for me. Hopefully, you don't hate me for saying this, but I will give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. Which, once again, I just want to let you know that is still a positive score, just not the best positive score. I am gonna continue making these videos, and I'll see you guys next time.